Hello, my dear children. Namaste and welcome to a brand new chapter of our Human Physiology unit for Class 10 ICSE Biology. Yes, we are going to get started with the chapter Nervous System. And this is Ambika, your biology master teacher, right here at Vedantu. Okay, guys, so I know all of you have been curiously waiting for this chapter because it's perhaps one chapter that gives nightmares to many of my children. I know, like in the last few years of teaching experience, this is what I have seen. But trust me, it's completely normal to feel a little worried or anxious about this chapter because of the terms that it has and because of the kinds of concepts that it discusses. But let us, as always, ensure that this is also very, very easy, just like any other chapter that we have in class 10. Okay, so we'll just move ahead bit by bit. And today we are going to be getting started with one very simple topic from this chapter. But before we jump right there, have a look at this. When you start seeing your worth, you will find it harder to stay around people who don't see your worth. Yes. So it is said by an unknown person. Well, we don't know who said this, but it's certainly very, very true. What matters most is that you start seeing your own worth. You must know what you are capable of, and you must be the kind of person who has the ability to judge yourself in the right manner rather than wait for others to click on the like button on your social media pictures or your social media posts and comment on them or anything like that. Don't go by the number of those, because if we went by what others wanted from us, then we are not ourselves anymore, right? So let us learn to just have the right kind of people in our lives, and that's what matters the most. Okay, children, so let me share something very, very exciting with you all. And we at Vedantu are all very, very happy to share that our students, many of our students, have bagged some of the top ranks in IIT JEE, and this has been the best results amongst all online classes. Well, these are some of our super achievers, some of our super scorers from JEE Advanced 2020. You can look at all of them and how well they have worked and how hard they have worked for this. Well, I must certainly appreciate these children. I think I say this always whenever I have to share this piece of news with anyone at all. What comes to my mind is always the amazing fact that they have been able to achieve this despite conditions being so uncertain and so difficult around the world this year in 2020, right? So it clearly shows that hard work and determination and full passion and the willingness to work hard and to achieve your dreams, achieve your goals, reach your goals, hit your target is all that matters. Everything else that's uncertain is completely secondary. You do your part and everything else will follow in the right manner. Okay, children, so just be inspired by these children. I know 2021 boards are a few months away, but it's high time you motivated yourself. Do not sit in a laid back attitude thinking that, okay, I still have a few months. No, this is the right time to get motivated, to push yourself, because pushing yourself is what matters most. Nobody else can do it for you, and working hard is completely your choice. Ultimately, it's only lazy people, and it's only unambitious people, or however you would want to call it, lazy people, as we want to put it in simple language, who would want to give excuses and put the blame on somebody else or circumstances. So let's not think about all that. Let's just be positive, have faith in ourselves. We at Vedantu, remember, we are always here to support you. We will keep coming up with as much interesting and useful content as possible, always, all the time. Okay, children, so today let us learn about what is neuron and the structure of neuron, and of course I will also tell you a little bit about the types of neurons. Okay, so before that, as I told you, we will always be here to support you, because these are the problems that most of our children face these days: doubts, notes, tests and assignments, competitive exams, choice of schedule, choice of language. Everything seems like a problem these days because everything is happening online. But as I say, not to worry at all, because we have got them all completely solved for you. And in addition to solving these, we give you a lot of bonuses. What exactly are they? Unlimited live classes, plenty of micro courses and crash courses, performance reports, and personalized attention so that you can realize your full potential and come out with flying colors. So, just in case you're wondering what exactly micro courses are, crash courses, I think everyone knows what they are. Micro courses is a special feature we have at Vedantu, which are topic level courses. For example, chapter level or topic level courses. Say, for instance, you want to brush up your understanding or your knowledge of one particular chapter, like the nervous system. We have micro courses specifically for that you can access, or any other chapter, any other subject. That is what micro courses are meant for, to strengthen your grasp over the hardest of concepts in your conception according to you as a student, because every child has different strengths and weaknesses. It's keeping that in mind that we have all of these. So to know more about this, children, just visit the link given in the description box below and the pinned comment which is right there in the comment section below. And once you visit those, remember to apply the coupon code AMBPRO in order to avail the best benefits, the best discounts that we have out there also, because we believe in giving you the best content along with making it pocket friendly. Okay, so just in case you're wondering how exactly this works, let me guide you through it very quickly. Click on the link and it will guide you through, it will take you through a set of tabs. So initially you will get an option to choose your grade. So for you, I'm assuming it's going to be grade 10, and then select your target. So for instance, you're going to be appearing for CBSE 2021 final exams. Go and select that, or if it's anything else, ICSE, if it's for you. Now, this being an ICSE batch, let me say ICSE 2021, or choose it accordingly. And then move on and check out all the features which are listed here about Vedantu Pro. I've listed out some of them already, but we do have a lot more also. So just check them out and then click on the button that says Get Subscription. Yes, you can subscribe either for 1 month, for 3 months, or for 6 months. Okay, so I have the details of all of them here. For a 1 month of Pro subscription, the amount payable is normally rupees 2,699. Okay, which means for that 1 full month, you have complete access to all of these unlimited live classes, test series, assignments, notes, and plenty of others. Okay, but apply the code AMBPRO to get the best benefits, and the amount payable gets reduced to 2,159.2. Okay, and this is about 1 month, and then for 3 months, it's right here. The normal amount payable is 6,999, and after application of the coupon code, it reduces to 5,599.2. Okay, this is for 3 months, and then for 6 months, in case you want to be tension free and leave everything to Vedantu for a longer period of time, go for the 6-month subscription, which means the normal amount you would end up paying for all your major subjects together for these 6 months would be 11,499, but apply the code AMBPRO to get it reduced to 9,199.2. Okay, so do check out the details, children, well in detail. As I told you, click on the link in the description box below. We also have the Shera special offers coming up, so do not miss them and grab your offers right now, because as I said, we completely believe in making it a well-balanced combination between being budget friendly and at the same time making it great quality content for you. Okay, and with that, let us move on. Why do we need a nervous system? Well, we have been discussing a lot about other systems in our body, like excretory system, circulatory system. And in your lower grades, you've also seen how your digestive system functions, how your respiratory system functions, and all of that. So these are 4 major reasons why we need a nervous system. For example, to be informed about the surroundings, to remember, think, and reason, which means like for everything on a daily basis, to be able to remember something, to be able to think and make decisions, and to be able to have that basic reasoning ability. Your nervous system is essential to control all your voluntary muscle activities. I want to get up and walk now. I need help from my nervous system, right? And then to regulate involuntary muscle activity. What is that? My heart has to keep beating. My digestive system has to keep functioning. My lungs have to keep functioning. all the other internal organs in my body need to continue functioning involuntarily without any external stimulation, without any external motivation. Even for that, it is my nervous system which I would depend on. Yes, this is why we need the nervous system. And other reasons, we can think about anything. What decides whether I'm a right-handed person or a left-handed person is decided by my nervous system, decided by my brain, basically. It's genetic, of course, but it's my brain which decides. And color perception, what I see, what I hear, my sense organs, all of this is controlled by my nervous system. And this stands true not just for us, it stands true for almost every living being on this planet. Right. Of course, mechanisms would be completely different for different organisms, but let us in this chapter focus on the human nervous system. So, what exactly is neuron? We keep talking about neuron, we keep talking about nerves. Now, what exactly is a neuron? Neuron, simply put, refers to the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. In fact, it is many neurons together which makes up a nerve fiber. Okay, and this, what you see in this image is two different types of neurons, about which I will be telling you in a while. So you can see how beautifully they are able to transmit messages, which we call electrical impulses or action potentials. And it is because of this transmission that we are able to convey information, or our body is able to convey information from one part of our body to another part. And yes, it's because of this function that neurons are said to be in this shape and size. They are elongated cells. And these are also said to be cells which don't undergo division most of the time. Like most neurons in our body do not have the ability to regenerate. Once they are formed, they are formed. Degeneration can happen as we age, but then regeneration doesn't happen for most neurons in our body. Also, this is one of the major reasons why brain injuries or spinal cord injuries are said to be very, very dangerous, because it's very, very difficult for these cells to be regenerated by the body. Many times it ends up being fatal, or we call a person brain dead, because there is no other use with that person. All the other organs are functioning well, but then neurons have been lost. So these are some of the unique features of neurons that are worth knowing. Okay, now coming to the structure of a neuron, there are three major parts for a neuron, which are the cell body, or the cyton or perikaryon. This portion is what we call the cell body or the cyton. And then comes dendrites. These branched structures which you see here are called dendrites. Yes, tree branches, something like that. And then we have a long branch or a long stem-like structure which we call the axon. So what are the functions of each of these? Let's start with the dendrites. The dendrites are involved in, as you see here, receiving nerve impulses. Axon is involved in conducting nerve impulses, and axon terminals are involved in transmitting nerve impulses. Where do they transmit it? They transmit the nerve impulses to the adjacent neuron, the neuron that comes right next to it. How that occurs, I will tell you in a while, but this is how it occurs. And what does a cyton do? Of course, the dendrites are able to receive nerve impulses. The cyton is the cell body because it carries the nucleus and it's able to process the information which has been received, and it's transmitting all this. It's conducting the nerve impulse along the neuron through the axon, which is this long structure here. Okay, so with that, let's move on and try and understand more about nerve impulse transmission. I just told you, from one neuron to the adjacent neuron, it transmits electrical signals or nerve impulses, what we call action potentials, right? But how does this happen? Of course, it's a very, very detailed process, but for your level, however, it will be simple enough for you to understand. Let's understand it in that sense. So the direction of transmission of nerve impulse is said to be unidirectional. It starts getting received by the dendrites, gets conducted through the axon, and gets transmitted by the nerve terminals or the axon terminals, as you see here. The nerve impulse always travels from dendrites to the axon, just like what you see here, right? Okay. Yes. And once it has reached your axon terminals, what exactly happens? This image helps you get a better idea about that. Now, this is in fact one single axon terminal. Remember, this is one single neuron. Let me just draw a rough diagram here to set better context for you. This is its axon, and at the end, it's got axon terminals. And at the end of the axon terminals, there are certain bulb-shaped structures which are present. We call it, this is what we call the axon terminal. One single axon terminal is what we are showing in this diagram here. Okay, so the axon terminal, you can see it's got certain vesicles which we call synaptic vesicles. Now, these synaptic vesicles are filled with a substance, a chemical substance, which we call neurotransmitters. The most important neurotransmitter in our body is a substance called acetylcholine. Okay, so why is it important? Now, let me tell you that what you see here in this brown or yellow or orange, I don't know what you want to call it, how you perceive it, I don't know, but it looks like a shade of light brown and a mix of yellow and orange to me, this part. Okay, so this is actually the adjacent neuron, okay, a portion of the adjacent neuron which is coming right after this particular neuron. So this portion of the axon terminal, we call it the presynaptic membrane. Okay, and this portion of the adjacent neuron, we call it the postsynaptic membrane. Now, what is synaptic? Synaptic vesicles also I have told you. So the term synapse refers to this particular point, the point at which two adjacent neurons meet each other. Rather, the axon terminal of one neuron meets the dendrites of the adjacent neuron. That is the part which we call the synapse. So as a result, if this has to be the synapse, it makes complete sense to believe that this is the presynaptic membrane and this is the postsynaptic membrane, right? Because pre is what comes before and post is what comes after. So once again, presynaptic membrane and the postsynaptic membrane. Okay, and what you see here is, I told you, inside the synaptic vesicles, it's filled with neurotransmitters which are chiefly acetylcholine. So what happens is, when a nerve impulse is getting transmitted along this particular neuron, when this impulse reaches the axon terminal, this synaptic vesicle moves along and reaches the presynaptic membrane. Once it comes in contact with the presynaptic membrane, this synaptic vesicle just opens to release its contents, which is the neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are released into the synapse. Okay, and what do they do? This synapse, this neurotransmitters in the synapse now bind to the receptors which are found on the postsynaptic membrane. Okay, so once again, from the synaptic vesicles, the synaptic vesicles are moving closer and closer to the presynaptic membrane, and from there, once it's in contact with the presynaptic membrane, the synaptic vesicles open up to release the neurotransmitters in them. And now the neurotransmitters are released in the gap or the junction which we call the synapse. Now what happens? It is now in contact with receptors which are found on the postsynaptic membrane, which means the dendrites of the next neuron. Okay, so when does this happen? I've told you, when action potential is moving along it, or when a nerve impulse is moving along the neuron. So it is when the neurotransmitter gets in contact with the postsynaptic membrane that we say the impulse has been transmitted from this neuron to the next neuron. This is how, simply put, transmission of nerve impulse happens. But how does this happen at a deeper level? In the sense, it is not just acetylcholine that plays an important role here. It's also plenty of ions like sodium ions, potassium ions, and calcium ions, which play a major role in this process. Let us try and understand that more in detail. But let me zoom in and show you how exactly neurotransmitter release and receiving by the postsynaptic membrane happens. So you can focus on this and understand how this occurs. So the nerve impulse is coming along, synaptic vesicles are opening to release the neurotransmitters, receptors are receiving them, and it's getting transmitted into the postsynaptic membrane into the adjacent neuron. And what happens to these vesicles? The neurotransmitter in them keeps getting regenerated. There are certain mechanisms for that. For now, our focus is not on that. Okay, so continuously this process keeps happening. Okay, so let us move on to understand more about the ions. As I told you, ion channels, there are certain ion channels on the membranes, along the membranes of neurons, especially along the axon membranes. Okay, so normally in a normal state of a neuron, which we call the resting state, what happens is the normal condition is such that there are more sodium ions outside the axon membrane than the inside. Okay, so there are more sodium ions outside, but more potassium ions inside the nerve cell. This is the normal condition, which we call the polarized state or the resting state. Okay, let me also write this name. It's also called the resting state, when nothing is happening. Okay, now when a message is arriving or when an action potential is arriving, the permeability of the axon membrane to these ions changes. Okay, when an action potential is approaching, what happens is we say this segment of the axon or this segment of the neuron gets stimulated. So upon stimulation, the axon becomes more permeable to sodium ions. So what happens is, as you see in this GIF here, in this simple animation here, when the axon becomes more permeable to sodium ions are able to move inward into the neuron. Okay, so currently the cell has lost its polarized state, and as a result, we call it a state of depolarization. We say it is in a state of depolarization because it has lost its state of polarization. Because what was in its resting state was what we said is in a polarized state. That too, it was when sodium ions were more outside than inside. But now what happens is, upon stimulation or upon arrival of a nerve impulse, sodium ions are able to enter into the neuron, and as a result the depolarized state is lost. It is losing its state of depolarization, and it's losing its state of polarization, and as a result we say it's in a state of depolarization. Okay, normal state is polarization, loss of polarization is what we call depolarization. Okay, and now what happens next is, this segment of the neuron which is currently in a state of depolarization acts as the trigger for the next segment of the neuron. Okay, so how exactly does this occur? Have a look at this. I think this will give you a better insight into it. So let me just number it as 1, 2, and 3 and take them one at a time. What you see in part 1 of the image is that we are focusing on one segment of the neuron or the axon, wherein the particular segment got stimulated by the arrival of the nerve impulse and it got depolarized. It lost its resting state, and sodium ions are able to come inside this portion of the neuron, and we say it's in a state of depolarization. Okay, and now what is right next to it, the segment which is right next to it, we say it's in a state of resting state. We say it's in a state of resting state, or polarized state. So what happens is, as I said, the portion which is currently depolarized acts as a trigger to stimulate its immediate neighboring segment also. This is exactly what you see in image 2, wherein the depolarized state has managed to depolarize the segment immediately next to it, which is this portion which was in a resting state earlier has now become depolarized. So what's happening to this particular segment? It is becoming back to a state of repolarization. It is trying to get back to its polarized state, and we say it is now in a state of repolarizing. Repolarizing state is what this segment is in, and its immediate neighbor is in a state of depolarization right now. And what is next to it? Next to this depolarized segment, we see that the further segments are in a state of rest or in a state of polarization. And now further this continues. This depolarized segment is able to trigger this segment and it continues. So what you see is in the third image, this segment is in a state of rest currently. This segment, which is depolarized in image 2, is now in a state of repolarizing in image 3. And this segment, which is resting here in image 2, is getting depolarized in image 3. And this continues further because from here to here, the trigger continues. And this way, the nerve impulse gets transmitted in the form of a wave across the entire neuron and gets transmitted to the adjacent neuron also with the help of the neurotransmitters. Okay, so we have spoken about it with the context of sodium ion concentration, right? So do remember, in a state of rest, or when we say a neuron is in a state of rest, we say it's in a state of polarization, because there are more sodium ions outside as compared to inside. When more sodium ions enter inside, more positive charge increases inside the cell, and that is when we say it's in a state of depolarization. Okay? And then what happens is that acts as a trigger for the subsequent segment of the neuron, and this further continues. So how exactly does this happen? This process of influx and efflux of ions happens with the help of a protein pump, which we call the sodium pump or the sodium potassium pump. So the role of the sodium potassium pump is basically to ensure that there are always more sodium ions outside the neuron, but more potassium ions inside the neuron. As you can see, the green balls here are representing the potassium ions. The yellow balls here are representing the sodium ions. What exactly is the sodium pump doing? What it does is it's transporting sodium ions outside and it's transporting potassium ions inside. I've not mentioned potassium in the previous slides just to avoid confusion. It's more of a complex explanation that we might need for that. But here I'm telling you just for you to understand how exactly the sodium pump or the sodium potassium pump is able to carry out its functions. Okay, so as I said, normally the pump is there to ensure that there are more potassium ions inside and more sodium ions outside. Now, why is this important? This basically helps in stabilizing the cell's membrane potential, which means it is something that is very, very critical for normal functioning of the neuron. What is critical? Maintenance of more sodium ion concentration outside and more potassium ion concentration inside the nerve cell. Okay, so this is where this comes into picture. And now let us move on to the different types of neuron. There are broadly three major types of neurons: sensory neurons, motor neurons, and association neurons. What exactly is a sensory neuron? Sensory neuron is the type of neuron which transmits nerve impulses from sense organs, or the receptor organs as we call them, to our central nervous system. What is the central nervous system? Our brain and the spinal cord. So from our sense organs to the central nervous system, sensory neurons would transmit nerve impulses. Okay. And then what happens? Interneurons or association neurons, which are right here, are also, they are located in the central nervous system, which means interneurons are found in the brain and the spinal cord, and they act as a sort of link between sensory neurons and the motor neurons. Now comes the question, what exactly are motor neurons? Motor neurons are those neurons which transmit impulses as a sort of response from the central nervous system to the effector organs. What are effector organs? Your muscles or all of those organs where a response will have to be communicated from your brain and spinal cord. Okay, we call them effector organs. Okay, like for example, think about a condition where I'm touching something very hot. What would I do? I'm touching a hot iron by chance. Okay, so what would happen? I'm touching it and I'm like immediately pulling my hand back. But actually, all of these three types of neurons have played a role so quickly in helping me pull back my hand. My sensory neurons in my skin, my tactile receptors, my sensory neurons from the touch receptors have communicated to my central nervous system that I have touched something dangerous, something that is very hot. So that is my sensory neuron. And in my central nervous system, which is in my brain and spinal cord, interneurons have received that nerve impulse and they are immediately stimulating the motor neurons from there. In the sense, they are sending back responses with motor neurons, which are coming and telling the muscles of my hands and fingers to pull back my hand. This is what motor neuron does. Effectors in this context is nothing but my muscles. Okay, but anything where a response has to be elicited. Okay, sensory neurons in terms of stimulus and motor neurons in terms of response. Okay, these are the major types of neurons. And now let me tell you one more type of neuron, which are myelinated neurons and unmyelinated or non-myelinated neurons. So in the structure of the nerve, in the structure of the neuron, which I have already told you, there is one part which I haven't mentioned, and that is a simple coating along the axon, which is called the myelin sheath. Okay, there are neurons which do have a myelin sheath. There are also neurons which do not have a myelin sheath. Okay, but in the human body and in most vertebrates, most neurons are said to be myelinated neurons. So as you can see, it's not a continuous membrane, like not a continuous coating along the axon. It's rather found in intervals. See that? Yes. These are the coatings which we call the myelin sheath. So in myelinated neurons, what happens is, what we need to take care of is that the nerve impulse transmission, which is transmission of the working of the sodium potassium pump, would occur only in the areas which are present between the adjacent myelin sheaths, which means in those gaps. And these gaps which are there between adjacent pieces of myelin sheath are called nodes of Ranvier. We call them the active sites because it is only in those areas where there is easy access to those ions. It is those areas where the sodium potassium pump will be able to function normally in order to transmit sodium and potassium into or out of the nerves as necessary, into or out of the nerve cells as required. Okay, so this is about the myelin sheath, and as you can see, in non-myelinated neurons, all this transmission, sodium potassium balance and everything happens across the entire neuron, not restricted to certain regions. Okay, because obviously that coating is not there. Overall, in terms of efficiency, myelinated neurons are said to be more efficient and faster in nerve conduction as compared to non-myelinated neurons. You can see very well the speed with which, if you consider this to be a running race, if this is A and if this is B, A is obviously able to transmit its nerve impulses faster than B. Right? Why? Because it's got myelin sheath, which is making it more efficient. Because these nerve impulses literally jump from one node to the adjacent node. Okay, this is how it gets transmitted. All right, so that is about the different kinds of neurons, children, and I hope this was clear to you. Let us now have a very, very quick check based on our understanding of whatever we have discussed until now. The cell which stops dividing after birth, and it's one of the largest cells in the human body, is dash. Neuron, glial, epithelium, liver. The cell which stops dividing after birth. And your time is up. Neuron is the answer. We would say it's one of the largest, rather one of the longest cells in the human body. In fact, the largest cell known to man so far in the human body has been the egg cell, the ovum in the females. Okay, next. Which of these transmits impulses from the brain to the effector organs? Sensory neurons, association neurons, interneurons, or motor neurons? Which of them, remember the pathway which I told you, which of them is involved in response? Yes? And your time is up. The answer is motor neurons. Okay, motor neurons help in transmitting impulses from the brain to the effector organs. Now comes the next question. Which of the following is regarded as a unit of nervous tissue. Axons, dendrites, neuron, myelin sheath, the functional unit of the nervous tissue, as we would like to call it. Which of them? And your time is up. The answer is neuron, of course. Nephron in the case of kidneys, neuron in the case of nerves, maybe alveoli in the case of your lungs or respiratory system, and so on. Now comes the next question. Which of these damaged cells cannot be repaired? Liver cells, brain cells, bone cells, or epidermal cells? And your time is up. The answer is brain cells, because they have the least ability to regenerate as compared to the other cells. And one more question, children. The junction between the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of the next is called dash. A joint, a synapse, a constant bridge, or a junction point. Yes, the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of the next neuron. And your time is up. The answer is a synapse. Yes, what am I talking about? Let me draw the rough diagram for you so that you can recall that easier. This is the axon of this neuron. The axon terminals are here. And then comes the next neuron with its cell body and its axon. I'm talking about this junction. It is the synapse, beyond doubt. And one more last question for the day. Acetylcholine, what exactly is it? Is it a hormone? Is it an enzyme? Is it a neurotransmitter? Is it a lipid? Okay. Your time is up. And the answer is, of course, a neurotransmitter. Remember, it is the acetylcholine that is stored inside the synaptic vesicles. It gets released at the presynaptic membrane into the synapse, gets attached to the receptors on the postsynaptic membrane, and from there, it is able to trigger nerve impulses, a fresh new nerve impulse in the adjacent neuron. And very, very well done if you have got all of these answers correctly. Very well done, children. If not, just in case you've got any of these answers wrong, I would suggest please watch a replay of this, because it's extremely important to go slow and steady. On the eve of the exam, you are definitely not gonna come and watch this video. I'm damn sure about that. Right now, get your concepts cleared and only then move on to the next session. Okay, so you now know about what a neuron is, the structure of neuron, and let me add to it nerve impulse transmission and also types of neurons. And here is my homework for you for today. The chemical which helps the neuron to communicate is called dash. What is it? A very direct question. Let's see who comes up with the first answer. And do remember to visit the link in the description box below and the pinned comment. And please remember to apply the coupon code children AMBPRO. I'm saying this for your own benefit so that you can avail the best discounts available currently. Okay. And children, please do remember to click on the like button right now if you found this useful and if you have enjoyed this session, because that's the best way of communicating with us, that you need more and more videos like these. And please share it with all your friends. I'm sure everyone, all your ICSE class 10 friends would benefit from this, and CBSE also, because unfortunately for CBSE this year, this chapter, control and coordination is a chapter that's been deleted. But I personally believe, especially for NEET aspirants, this forms a base in understanding a major chapter in class 11. So please do share it with your CBSE friends as well. And in case you have not subscribed to our channel yet, please do remember to subscribe to our channel Vedantu 9th and 10th English, because as you know, it's not just your subjects, it's also your revision which is taken care of. It's also giving you additional motivational sessions that we take care of, and anything and everything that is of popular demand. We try and ensure that it's right here for your benefit to make your learning journey a lot smoother and easier. And yes, please feel free to add anything further to the comment section below so that we would know what exactly you need. Thank you very much, children, for joining me today. And until we meet again, please do remember to take care, stay happy, and stay safe. Oh, by the way, not to forget, as I told you, the Shara special discounts are also available on our subscription courses. So do not forget about that. Do not miss out on that either. And take care. Bye-bye.